Greetings, welcome to Facts About Everything. I'm your host, James Egan. Today we're going to look at the Marvel superhero, Blade. You may be wondering, do I mean the comic books or the movies? And the answer is both. Even if you absolutely love the Blade films and the comics, there's one very simple thing everyone forgets about Blade. He's British. Despite the fact he's been played by at least 11 different actors in films and animated shows, he has never one single time been depicted with a British accent, despite the fact he was born in London. I'm not sure I can picture Blade with a British accent now.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off!
I drove a car off a freeway on top of a train while I was on fire. Not the car, I was on fire. Jim.
And that is the first fact about Blade. Let's dive in. His real name is Eric Brooks. He debuted in Marvel Preview number 3 in 1975. The story was called The Night Josie Harper Died. His mother was a prostitute who was bitten by a vampire called Deacon Frost as she was going into labor. As a result, Blade was born with several vampire abilities, including super strength, reflexes, and durability. However, he also becomes hypersensitive to sunlight. Now you might be thinking, wait, he's not hypersensitive to light in the movie, that's why he's called the Daywalker. Well, that's the thing. In the comics, Blade was bitten by Morbius the living vampire. Now Morbius isn't a real vampire. He was injected with a concoction from a vampire bat's blood, which left him with a desire for human blood. When Morbius bit Blade, it granted him all the strengths of a vampire, but none of their weaknesses. This made Blade immune to garlic, crosses, vampire bites, and vampire hypnosis. It also gave Blade his greatest advantage. He was no longer vulnerable to sunlight. When the vampire community learned of this, they nicknamed him the Daywalker. Although Deacon Frost and Morbius granted Blade many abilities, he has one major weakness. He has a thirst for blood. Luckily, Blade has a moral compass and refuses to act on his bloodlust. Due to his unique physiology, Blade is faster, stronger, and more durable than a regular vampire. He has a healing factor that is almost on par with Wolverine. He can regenerate lost limbs or organs. He used to be a part of a street gang called the Blood Shadows. Vampires are fatally allergic to ultraviolet rays, which is why sunlight kills them. As a result, Blade has an arsenal of ultraviolet weapons. Based on the Blade films, you would assume the vampire hunter was raised by Whistler. However, Whistler originated from the Spider-Man cartoon in the 1990s, not the comics. In Blade's original backstory, he was raised by a jazz musician called Jamal Afari. When Blade was 9, he saw Jamal being attacked by vampires. This was the first time that Blade realized that vampires existed. Luckily, Jamal defeated the Bloodsuckers because he was also a vampire hunter. He raised Blade and trained him to combat against vampires. Years later, Jamal was bitten by Dracula. When Blade found him, Jamal begged him to stay away as he could feel his thirst for blood overwhelm him. Blade had no choice but to kill him. In recent comics, Blade has joined the Avengers. He is an expert with every form of weaponry known to man. He often uses garlic-filled silver bullets and acid-etched swords so he can kill vampires as quickly as possible. Sometimes I hate my neighbor. He is so fast with knives, he is nicknamed Switchblade. He can instinctively tell when supernatural creatures are nearby. Blade can lift 10 tons. He can hypnotize others to do his bidding. Blade is classified as a Dhampir, half man, half vampire. He can jump hundreds of feet in the air. Upon his debut, he wore a green visor and a green leather jacket. I'm pretty sure the writers didn't know how black people dressed at the time. There was a TV series of Blade in 2006. The titular role was played by Sticky Fingers.
It's been fun.
The show was met with poor reviews and was cancelled after one season. He is voiced by Terry Crews in the 2012 animated series Ultimate Spider-Man.
There are worse threats out here tonight than these things.
Like what?
Me.
Now let's look at the movies. Let's start with the 1998 film, Blade. When Blade is chased on the subway, a train passes by. All the passengers on the train are cardboard cutouts. Wesley Snipes plays a titular role. He also produced the film. Wesley Snipes is one of the only actors to be cast as a Marvel superhero without auditioning. There's a super obese vampire called Pearl. Some viewers wonder how Pearl could be so big if all he consumes is human blood. Pearl is so impatient when it comes to devouring human blood that he gorges on humans whole. Marvel was so skeptical of the movie, they didn't want their logo to appear in the film. Many people had no idea the film was based on a comic book. The film was directed by Stephen Norrington. David Fincher was considered to direct. Stephen Dorff plays the main villain, Deacon Frost. Jet Li was offered the role. Donald Logue plays Quinn. This isn't the only comic book story he's appeared in. He plays Bullock in the TV series Gotham. Deacon tells Karen that everyone in the world will eventually become a vampire. In the original script, Karen pointed out that an all-vampire world wouldn't work because vampires needed humans to live off. Deacon then explained that humans would be harvested in blood bags. This idea was used in Blade Trinity. Stan Lee was supposed to play the cop that discovered Quinn's burnt body in the beginning. Denzel Washington was considered for the lead role. The test screens for the film were atrocious. The film had to be reshot and re-edited for 6 months before it was released. The vampire Bible is called the Book of Erebus. Erebus is the Greek god of night. The vampire god is called La Magra. La Magra means the thin one. There was supposed to be a scene showing Blade keeping a vampire baby in his lab for experimentation. 88 people die in this film. Blade's sword is a ninjato blade, which lacks a super guard. This makes it a completely impractical weapon for sword fighting, but doesn't matter because it looks really cool. The tagline was, "The power of an immortal, the soul of a human, the heart of a hero." The film concludes with Deacon turning into La Magra. Originally, he was going to turn into a gigantic blood monster. The special effects team couldn't make it look right, so they made Deacon into a super vampire. Yeah, as great as this movie was, it did not have good special effects. They were terrible even back then. All joke aside, Blade is one of the most important films ever made. Not one of the most important comic book films, one of the most important films. This movie changed everything because this was the first mainstream Marvel film ever. Not Spider-Man, not X-Men, it was Blade that opened the doorway to Iron Man, the Avengers, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. Despite the fact he's quite an obscure superhero to millennials, Marvel fans will forever be in his debt. Blade 2 came out in 2002. Michael Jackson was meant to cameo as a pimp. The Reapers have a stinger on their mouths. This is based on the vampires from Polish mythology that sports a finger on their tongue. The vampire leader, Damaskinos, is based on Count Orlok from the film Nosferatu. Nomak's look is based on the mutants in the film Beneath the Planet of the Apes. Donnie Yen plays Snowman. He was a fighting choreographer for the film. Scud wears a t-shirt with the emblem of the Bureau of Paranormal Research and Defense. This bureau is where Hellboy works in the 2004 film Hellboy. Also, in case you didn't notice, Scud is played by Walking Dead's Norman Reedus. Morbius the Living Vampire was supposed to be the main villain. The studio decided not to use Morbius in case they wanted him to star in a future Spider-Man film. 16 years later, that's never happened. Also, Morbius cameos in the alternative ending to Blade 1. Jared Leto has been cast as Morbius the Living Vampire, so do let me know if you want me to do a video about him. Thomas Kretschmann plays Damaskinos. He went on to play another comic book villain, Baron von Strucker, in Avengers Age of Ultron. Tim Curry was considered for the role of Damaskinos. 110 people die in this film. The tagline was, "Last time he fought his sworn enemies. This time, he will fight with them." The UV lights were incorrectly used in the autopsy scene, which left 30 members of the cast and crew temporarily blind. Now let's look at Blade Trinity, which came out in 2004. This movie couldn't do anything right. Not only is the movie terrible, even the commercials couldn't do the film right. Jessica Biel is in this film, but the commercial for this film credited her as Jessica Alba. Wesley Snipes hated the script. He said Blade would never have, quote, sidekicks. Snipes refused to be on set unless he had to be. He spent most of his time in his trailer smoking weed. He usually communicated with the crew using post-it notes.
He would only answer to the name Blade. You couldn't call him.
He would only answer
the Blade. Yeah, he resorted to just he would communicate with post-its that he would give.
Snipes' stand-in was used in almost every scene where Blade's face is invisible.
Darkcore, trip hop, whatever kids are listening to these days. Me, I'm more of a David Hasselhoff fan, you know.
Reynolds said that Wesley Snipes acted like he was having a mental breakdown while shooting. One of the only things he said to Reynolds was, "Keep your mouth shut, you'll live longer." According to Jessica Biel, Wesley Snipes said 10 words to her throughout the shoot. Wesley Snipes attacked the director within seconds of meeting him. Wesley Snipes is crazy, by the way. Not sure if that's coming across. Ryan Reynolds plays Hannibal King. Colin Farrell was considered for the role. In the comics, Deacon Frost turns Hannibal into a vampire. Blade Trinity was the directorial debut of David S. Goyer. He has written over 10 superhero movies, including the Dark Knight trilogy, Man of Steel, and Batman v Superman. Wrestler Triple H plays Jarko. The producers were so happy with his professionalism that extra dialogue was written for him. Hannibal tells Blade that Dracula has stopped evolving like the Great White Shark.
He was born perfect. And just like the Great White Shark, this guy has never had to evolve.
This is not true. The Great White Shark is still evolving. Who thought a vampire movie would be unrealistic? Jessica Biel destroyed a $300,000 camera in one scene. And for the final fact, let's look back at the comics. Blade has recurring nightmares about one thing. Twilight. But don't we all? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I've already asked if you want me to do a video about Morbius, but do let me know if there's any other Marvel superheroes or supervillains you want me to have a look at, and I'll upload a video as soon as possible.
To learn more facts, check out my books on Amazon. They're available on paperback and Kindle. Thanks for watching. See you again.